Hello and welcome back with Dreamhack, round number 8 of the regional championship. And Arya, we have a match almost ready to go. I want to hop right into it because our players have been waiting to play Magic. I want to see some Magic, but first we got to take a look at those deck lists here this weekend. And I think, Arya, we've done it. We've dodged Convoke for a game. You and I have been Convoke pilled this entire time, and I can't wait to see exactly that if I'm not mistaken or not here because we have 4-color Legends versus Temur Analyst. And let's start here with Noah Rabin's 4-color Legends deck. What do you like about this deck and what's going on with this version of it?
Yeah, so this is pretty close to the version of 4-color Legends that did really well at the Pro Tour. Looking to enact really the same combo. Instead of LS, you have Vile Smasher as your combo kill card. Really, little fewer, slightly less capable of comboing, or well, slightly less reliable at comboing because you just have fewer 2-drops total. But slightly better mana is what this deck gets. The card I want to point to that matters a lot in this matchup specifically is Urtai Resurrected, countering the triggered ability, the activated ability of Aftermath Analyst. Really, really important in this matchup, and being able to loop that with Otawara Takanuma allows the 4-color Legends deck to sometimes lock up games that Team Analysts would otherwise go over the top in.
Yeah, and let's check out Temur Analyst real quick. Another Jason Yi deck, a battle of the Jason decks, as it were. What do you like about this version of Temur Analyst? Anything that stands out to you?
Pretty straightforward. No Kellens, which works out pretty well here because this is not a matchup where that body matters that much, nor is it a matchup where you're looking to deal with a bunch of artifacts. So pretty straightforward list. Quite like it here. Fires of Victory is nice as a removal spell that can hit like a Titania or Lord Slogurk early. But yeah, otherwise just looking to do the Team Analyst thing we've seen so far and go over the top of the Slogurk deck. The matchup is very skill intensive and about finding little edges and trying to path out ways you win the game through the various options your opponents have. So I'm really interested to see these two great players playing these decks at this high stakes an event because it's going to make for some really interesting Magic with a lot of really interesting decisions.
All right. Well, let's check out our feature match because I'm excited as well, and the players are ready to go. We have Alan Wu on your left with Noah Rabin on your right.
Yeah. Oh, while we're waiting for the players to start, notably, Timo is not a Jason Yi deck.
Oh, excuse me.
Unfortunately, the Aftermath Analyst shell was CFD Sock,
The
and
CFT.
then another member of the team there on Sanctum was responsible for the Timo version.
Excuse me. That is my bad. Well, there we go. Now we all know as well as we are going to see the theater get popped and a Rona come down from Noah's side as Alan searched up that mountain and shuffled.
Yeah, I mean, Rona ideal start for the 4-color Legends deck. It's the strongest card in the deck, but strongest mana and cards engine. So you really want to keep hands that have it on too, and in Alan Wu spot, you really want to remove it on too. So pretty straightforward play so far.
Yep, Fires of Victory cleaning up that Rona. It's going to be one of the ways that Alan Wu, is going to win, keeping Rona off the board there. As we are going to see a draw for turn here. Looks like we picked up Spelunking for Alan. But
Yeah.
I think we have only tap lands.
Notably, we've seen a few matchups where the 4-color Legends deck is just, one matchup where the deck is really just trying to combo. But this is the first matchup we're seeing where the 4-color Legends deck will also be trying to apply this like aggro mid-range value plan and maybe like trying to get in for a bunch of damage with Slowcook. Where in this matchup, the Legends deck is much less of a combo deck and much more of a disruptive mid-range deck, looking to like interact with Urtai and the channel lands while applying pressure with Slowgug rather than trying to combo kill, just because the deck is quite capable of getting under Timo that way. And a straight up race doesn't really work out given how over the top, how quickly Timo goes over the top.
Yep. We're going to see a Slowgurk and a passing of the turn there for Noah. Notably, no land drop for turn. We do have the Relic of Legend, so we have plenty of mana available to us on the following turn. But I think that Alan is going to keep in mind. It looks like Alan's considering playing Spelunking. How important is Spelunking for this deck, Arya?
Spelunking, I'd say, pretty important for the deck in general as a way to rebate mana after Aftermath Analyst that doesn't die to removal. Notably, Nissa does a lot of Aftermath Analyst rebating, but is pretty awkward into removal heavy decks.
Yep. And speaking of which, we did see Nissa, was the play there for Alan. It got go for the throw immediately there by Noah using the Relic and Slowgurk. Remember, Slowgurk gets the ability from the Relic, so even though it's summoning 6 still, it still casts spells. That is how the deck combos. And we're going to, search our deck with our brokers, hide out, get another island, and pass the turn to Noah.
Yeah, so this is kind of pretty close to what the 4-color Legends deck wants to be doing. Maybe a little more stumbling, playing out Relic on 3, not ideal, but getting a Slowgurk down, starting to apply pressure, and really interacting with the Temur deck's ramp engine is really important.
Mm-hmm. We're going to see Tiny Bones come on the battlefield, everyone's favorite.
Who doesn't love a little skeleton with a cowboy hat?
How could you not? If you're out there and you're like, I don't like Tiny Bones, ask yourself, why is that? Why is there no joy? Why is there no love? As we are going to see 3 mana tapped here from Alan.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Spelunking here that we just talked about. It definitely smooths out Alan's possible plays over the next few turns and makes Aftermath Analyst as a draw or as a play a much stronger bridge to the late game, since it no longer forces Alan to take a turn off to crack it. He gets his mana rebated pretty much immediately.
Yep. Yeah, Spelunking, putting that land into play there, and then land for turn. Looks like Noah has a bunch of relics in his hand. Some other card I couldn't quite make out, but not exactly what we're looking for. And we are seeing sometimes the awkwardness of these decks that need multiple pieces to come together.
Yeah, we also see a little bit of the clunkiness the 4-color Legends deck has with Relic specifically, where the first Relic is the strongest card in the deck and the second Relic is the weakest card in the deck. While redundancy is nice in some matchups against removal, particularly game 1, that's one of the fail cases of this deck. If you draw multiple relics, if you draw multiple cards, the deck generally circumvents that with Rona and Inti, getting rid of the dead cards. But if you don't find Rona, don't find Inti, or you have Rona and Inti interacted with you don't find them, the deck suddenly starts to function a lot less smoothly, and you get stuck with these clunky draws.
Alan here channeling the Colossal Sky Turtle, picks up the Nissa. I think that was when Tiny Bones went to target it. So then there would be nothing that we could play. Passing the turn, Alan does have a lot of mana available and is going to play that Nissa. It's going to play an island for turn. That's going to let Nissa generate a mana. So we actually have 5 here for Alan. Looks like Alan's gone for green mana.
Yeah, notably no fetch land there to go with Nissa and get Aftermath Analyst is huge.
Massive. As we are going to see a World Souls Rage come on down. Looks like it's going to be X's at least 2. We might be using the floating mana.
Yeah, no real reason to go for X's 3 at Slowgurk when any channel land prevents that from really working.
Yep. And speaking of a channel, we're going to see Boseiju in response to Spelunking. That's going to turn off some of the mana, as Alan would have been able to put in a lot of lands there. We're going to get to Boseiju search our deck, which is going to trigger our Nissa, the second land drop before the turn. We're going to get mana and go to flip over the top of our deck till we hit an elf or elemental.
Yeah, notably, even with the Spelunking being hit, that's 3 mana off this landfall trigger, 4 more landfall triggers off of the World Souls Rage. So that's actually going to be enough to cast an Aftermath Analyst if that's what Alan hits off this Nissa trigger.
Yep. And it'll be dangerously close to hitting the Virtue Strength too, which should come up later. Looks like the judge is double checking the Nissa to make sure. Looks like there's something going on here, just making sure that we resolve that ability. I think it's a situation where the player acknowledged the trigger and you can't partially resolve an effect. So by announcing mana, we've announced that we've done the thing, which means we can't miss the flipping. And the top card's the analyst, so we don't have to waste any time. And like you mentioned, that is a play and get it back to the lands available to us now.
Yeah, and the analyst is itself pretty close to mana neutral at this point. If it hits either one fetch land or two lands total, it's going to be net 0 mana spent on that. So we could be seeing, so there's going to be 7 mana available here to Alan at the end of this. And if we see that analyst played and cracked, we might still see as much as 7 or maybe even 8 mana available after that, which could mean the virtue gets played out this turn as well. And that's just a lot of pressure on Noah.
Mm. All right. Looks like we're taking care of the Aftermath Analyst trigger, putting a land in our graveyard, separating our lands in our yard from our spells just to make things easier for both players so they know kind of what's available to them at any one point. Yeah, Alan has Shigeki and Fires of Victory in hand, I believe.
Yeah, the draw shaping out the way they did means Alan's only going to have 6 mana at the end of this, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so the virtue's not going to be coming down this turn, which is pretty good for Noah. It's one fewer thing he needs to answer.
Yeah. You might also remember Noah from the top 4 of RC San Diego. We saw Noah put up a great run in, I believe, Standard as well. And Alan was someone, if you've watched a lot of competitive Magic, you definitely know, Pro Tour champion. So 2 very strong players. And one of the exciting parts of playing these RCs is you get to play against players of this caliber from all over the world, everyone trying to get to that Pro Tour.
Yeah, definitely some of the strongest players in the world. It's also it's also just an extremely high stakes event regardless of the prizes. So you see players like Jason Yee playing this who've already qualified for the Pro Tour, already qualified for the Worlds, but if you've earned an invite to this tournament, it's really high prestige, really high prize pool, so everyone's still trying to play in it regardless of whether they've got the invites locked up or not.
Yep. And that seems to be the end of Alan's turn. Go with the throat draw there from Noah. And one thing I want to highlight about this stand format I think is really cool is just all the different types of decks we've seen, right? Aria, you and I have only been in here for 3 rounds, but we've seen a combo deck, an aggro deck, a mid-range deck. There's a bunch of those. We saw a bunch of control earlier in the day, and then that's when Aria and I came in and we're like, no more blue-white for a couple rounds. Let's save Twitch chat from it. But, this format has a little bit of everything, and it's really great to see Standard be exciting here as Noah's trying to figure out, do I tap out? Do I kind of, expose my hand that, hey, I've got another relic, and decides to do it and pass the turn back to Alan with all that mana.
Yeah, Noah's missing land drops is not really doing anything unless he plays to the board. So I think the only way he wins this is if Alan kind of whiffs on impactful cards for a few turns. So might as well risk it and play out the relic, try and develop his mana, and hope Alan just draws nothing for a few turns.
Yep. Looks like Alan tapping 7 mana. Typically, that is where the Virtue comes in, but we'll have to see. Yep, and the Virtue of Strength comes on down.
Yeah, notably, Virtue of Strength on this board state, actually a ritual. It takes Alan up from 13 mana to 18 mana now off those 6 lands.
Yeah, Virtue of Strength, a particularly strong card once it hits the battlefield. And if you're able to facilitate it, as we get Shigeki going here, picking up an unreasonable number of cards in the graveyard, and you see Noah's just kind of like, yeah, I'm 7-0. I've got to hope that, I just don't die from here. Maybe I can draw like another Boseiju, get rid of this Virtue. But 2 World Souls Rage were picked up here, along with Colossal Sky Turtle, a land, Fires of Victory, and another Virtue. And the Virtues do stack. Am I correct, Arya?
That is correct. The virtues stack, and they don't stack additively. They stack multiplicatively. So if you have 2 virtues, you're not getting 6 times as much mana. You're getting 9 times as much mana. And then with 3, you get to 27, etc., etc.
It is really fun for everyone, as we are going to see go over the throat, maybe cast in response. Just clean up that Nissa. And Alan will somehow have to power through that happening to him.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that the go for the throat on Nissa is not going to be enough to enough to get Noah out of this spot.
Now, Arya, is Colossus Sky Turtle plus Shinjeki one of the ways that this deck kind of fights through the mid game whenever it just kind of fizzles on draw and doesn't have cards like World Soul's Rage to get back?
Yeah, I mean the deck needs a critical mass of mana sinks where like once the deck gets a ton of lands into play, you need a way to actually turn that into wins. And Colossal Skydoodle plus Shigeki, more so, I mean the combination between both of them is good, but generally when you're channeling Shigeki for a bunch, you're winning anyway. What's most important about that interaction is both of them are independently playable cards. Sky Turtle is a blocker if you need it on when you have a lot of mana and can interact on the board early. And Shigeki is a playable 2-drop that can get you to your late game. So both of them are independently playable cards that function as a mana sink. And that's really important, like you said, in helping these decks get out of the mid game by having enough mana sinks in the deck to reliably win these long games without having to play cards that essentially make the deck a little too clunky early. It Something ramp decks struggle with often is if you run too much top end, then you will have weak early games a lot of the time. So Shigeki and Skydoodle bridging that gap and kind of playing both roles is very valuable to the team analyst deck.
All right, and Noah is going to pack it up, sees the writing on the wall, and is going to start sideboarding and see if there's anything that Noah can do to win games number 2 and 3. And I want to do the same and see if we can check out what these players might be doing for game 2, number 3, as it is an open deckless tournament. Let's check out Alan Wu first. Arya, if you were in Alan's seat, what would you bring in and why?
Well, I definitely want those two abrades. Hitting Relic is really important. Most games, your opponent doesn't have 3 copies of the artifact, and the one they have is pretty crucial to victory. Pick your poison also makes sense. That's a card you really want to have against Relic, and it's just like uh, the efficiency of it really important in post spot games where every bit of resources, including mana, starts to matter more. I wouldn't be surprised to see Turn the Earths come in just to incidentally hate on the Slugger Graveyard synergies. That's most of the things I'd want. Uh, Doppelgang, Negate, Titan of Industry, all things you can consider bringing in. But broadly, you're really leaning on those artifact removal spells to have answers to Relic post board and slow down the gut game plan a bunch.
Makes sense to me. We picked our poisons there. Let's check out what the other side can do here for Noah. Anything that jumps out to you?
So a big thing that jumps out to me is Jace the Perfected Mind. This deck is very good at going through a lot of its deck with stuff like Takanuma, and so you can churn through your deck and find your one-offs pretty reliably. Now, once you find them, the deck is also very good at looping them with Slogurk and Takanuma. So a way this deck will fairly frequently win games is by just decking your opponent with Jace. Somewhat kind of out of nowhere in the mid to late game where you get a bunch of mana, you just Jace them twice in a turn. So that's a card that's definitely going to be coming in. And then beyond that, the hearses we talked about in several other matches that remain good against analysts, help you apply pressure and keep the actual ramp in check. And then Duress makes a lot of sense given how heavily analyst is reliant on non-creature top end.
Well, let's go down to our feature match area and see how the players are going to handle game number 2. As it looks like they are ready. Looks like Alan is on 7. And Noah's got a Blooming Marsh and a pass of the turn. What is Noah's best 2-drop? Is it just the Rona or something like Inti better in this kind of matchup where you're trying to pressure them more sometimes? Like, what if you were Noah, if you could pick any card to play, what would you pick?
I think it would still be Rona. Rona plus Inti is a really powerful engine, so really we want to assemble that. But the fact that Rona digs for a bunch of pieces and then has two sort of pseudo combos with both Relic and Inti means that it on 2 is just definitely the best thing you can be doing.
Well, Noah has the Inti instead. No Rona to be played. Alan did pick up a Pick Your Poison.
Yeah, unfortunately, Inti not an artifact, enchantment, or flyer, so a little worse here than a braid would have been.
Yep. We are going to see old Garen Brigg Growth cast to get back that fetch land out of the graveyard, guarantee our land drop for the next turn. One of the things I love about that Temur deck is how it's so good at just kind of, making all of its land drops thanks to cards like that are also its payoff at the end. Looks like Noah has a Slogurk and some other cards in hand, though.
Yeah, and I said that Rona is the 2-drop that Noah wants most here, but that said, I think he's still really happy to have Inti on 2. Just having a 2-drop to generate mana with Relic and start proactively attacking, pretty important, and Inti does a pretty good job digging you towards things you need post spot.
All right, we have Duress on Spelunking. Pick your poison. Memory Deluge has the options with 2 Riveteer Outlooks and 2 Islands as the land. If you were Noah, what were you thinking? Is the Relic worth protecting with the poison? Or you got to take out a card like Deluge? What's going through your head?
I think it's got to be either Relic. It's got to be either the protecting the Relic by taking Pick Your Poison or taking Spelunking. Spelunking disrupts Alan's curve the most. He ramps the least if he plays it, and he ramps the least if he plays it, and also he doesn't have another 3-drop to play if the Spelunking is taken, so he's just kind of wasting his mana. Pick Your Poison protects the Relic, which we obviously know is very important. Notably, taking Memory Deluge is really, really awkward here because not only does it have Flashback to make it more to make it relevant going into the late game, Alan could also have played both Spelunking and Pick Your Poison the same turn, and that would definitely have put Noah behind. So makes sense to take the Pick Your Poison there, protect the Relic, and plan around that. Particularly given the Slogurk in hand, the extra mana generated off Relic is extremely valuable.
Yeah, it seems like Noah's only, with the Slogurk in hand, we're only 2 more cards away from actually just winning the game, like you showed us last round, which chat will be pop quiz on. They're gonna have to, know exactly how the combo works. We won't tell them anymore. So we have to see there. Alan is going to Spelunking, put that Riveteer Outlook into play, and then search his deck for one of the basic lands.
Yeah, I think even combo aside, Slogurk plus Inti is a pretty powerful engine here for Noah. It represents a lot of damage very quickly, and since so much of Alan's removal is reliant on dealing damage, like even ill-timed explosion is capped at 7 damage with Virtuous Strength. It's not impossible for Slogurk to grow out of range of any removal spell in Alan's deck over the next couple of turns, and that's definitely something that's got to be on Noah's mind at this point, trying to figure out how he can apply pressures in ways that Alan can't counteract since he's somewhat on the back foot. And we know he doesn't have, at least a turn ago, that he didn't have much follow up to the Spelunking in hand.
Yeah, and you see Noah here having to tank a lot, picked up the Urtai for turn, and decides to discard that Zeotor's Proving Ground. Oh, I like that a lot. The NT art card for the NT trigger. That is a nice way to do it, as Duress is the flip.
Yeah, and Urtai here kind of brutal for Alan, where Duress here can take any interaction for Slogurk this turn, and then subsequent turns, Urtai can take anything that's going to any follow-up that's going to threaten to interact with the Slogurk, wipe the board, something like ill-timed explosion. You're just having Urtai to have that on lock, but it's Alan in a really awkward spot where there's like a 2, maybe 3-turn clock coming, and he's going to need to spend a turn digging with Memory Deluge, which is really awkward.
Yep. Looks like Noah's kind of talking out, figuring out exactly what he wants to do. Either World Soul Rage or Deluge is the choice here. It looks like he is going to go with the World Soul Rage. I like that. Makes it so he doesn't get overwhelmed with mana and forces Alan to commit, his sort of next turn to deluging.
Yeah, and in this spot, if Alan deluges, that's 6 points on board with the Inti and Slogurk. If Noah finds a land to discard to the Inti, that's 2 more counters, on one each on the Inti and Slogurk. That's 8, and then that plus the Urtai is representing a 2-turn clock. So in Noah's mind, there's like a really clear path to victory this turn, where Alan spends a turn Memory Deluging, Noah attacks, Alan spends a turn playing something that tries to not lose him the game, and then Noah counters that with Urtai and attacks for lethal over the next turn, on the next turn. So it's a very clear path to victory, and now the ball's in Alan's court to find some sort of combination of cards that can play around that and avoid him losing.
And I love this main phase Memory Deluge from Alan. He can tell that, something's up there with Noah, right? Like, this person didn't want to take my Deluge twice. Maybe he has something like a Negate or an Urtai in hand, right? Let me just main phase this now and make sure I get my 2 cards and make sure I can get out of this. I don't get tempoed out of the game.
Yeah, it's really important to not have your deluge counted here. I mean, that's pretty much the end of the game for Alan if it does. And on top of that, he has pick your poison in his deck both spots, so this also plays to the out of being able to blow up that Relic of Legends and turn off Noah's mana engine. So really heads up play from Alan.
Let's see what the players are going to do. Noah's going to attack, use point to the NT, going to discard a Xander's Lounge this time. It looks like Slowgurk's getting one counter and NT is targeting it, I believe. Okay, it's actually targeting the Slowgurk. We hit the Honest Rusty.
Yeah, and Alan is also very close to comboing now. I believe he's a Rona off. I don't think that's gonna matter this game though. It's just so hard for Alan to beat Urtai in this spot. There's not he really just needs to have two pieces of interaction, and one of which is probably ill-timed. One of which needs to be ill-timed explosion, and even if that is the case, just explosion, the 2 mana interaction he could have to pair with explosion largely doesn't kill Sloguk, so it's still pretty likely that Noah wins even through a single piece of interaction on top of an ill-timed explosion that Urtai counters.
It looks like Alan's going to tap 3 mana, put a Spelunking up front. Noah doesn't mind that, says, sounds good to me. Alan does get to put a land into play off the Spelunking. If he has one, which...
Yeah, there's not an amount of spelunking in the world that I'd be unhappy about my opponent doing here. They could spend a week in a cave and I'd be thrilled.
As Riveter Outlook is going to pop there. And then Alan's just shortcutting, going to play the Broker's Hideout as well. So up to 11 life now.
And yeah, with the Sloguk plus NT, that's 8. And then the Urtai is another 3 for 11. Even if something gets interacted with, as long as it's not the Sloguk, the NT discards cards, puts a counter, and then the Plaza of Heroes is face up on the board, not a land in graveyard. So it's a pretty high chance of lethal even through a piece of interaction in the spot.
Yeah. Looks like Noah's going to play it a little safe. Going to draw for the turn. Doesn't want to expose the Urtai. Picks an NT up from the hand. Double checking. Does feel like Noah's game to lose. Respect wanting to take just an extra second to check out what our options are.
Yeah, not playing into that plaza or that face-up plaza or Urtai does mean that Alan actually has a chance of winning this game when he didn't before, and would really heads up play here, waiting rather than trying to play a more impactful card on his turn, because this line allows Alan to live another turn through some sort of protection or interaction, whereas the other line would have lost Alan the game this turn.
Heads up play there for Alan, like you said. And Noah's trying to figure out, am I supposed to pop this plaza? And Arya, what do you think? Is Noah supposed to just let this NT go, or do you have to fight over it?
I think he might need to let this NT go just because Alan resolving a 7 mana spell is really tough for Noah. Notably, if Noah had drawn a land, this would have been lethal, I believe. This is 8 on board, 9 off the plaza, and could have been another 2 off the Inti. But given Noah doesn't have a single land in hand, any card he discards, the Inti is only going to be 1 counter, which will be exactly 10 damage, so not enough to kill Alan.
Yeah. It does feel like a spot where your decision here is going to decide the rest of the game. And it looks like we're going to Plaza, protect the NT, move to combat, attack, have an NT in hand. Probably going to see that one get discarded, maybe try to make a land drop. Yep. We're going to target Slowgurk with the NT trigger, and an Honest Rusting goes to exile. And wham, bam. We hit you for 8, down to 3 for Alan Wu.
Yeah, and this is This is the one way I could see things going wrong for Noah. Where if there's some big haymaker play from Alan here, then that puts Noah in a really tough spot because you just lost land.
Yep. And it looks like Alan's going to pick up the cards, and we're going to have a game number 3 here between Alan and Noah. And let's quickly, check out Alan's Temur Analyst deck again. After seeing that game, did anything change for you, Arya? You went a time of industry now, or kind of what you said before is what you stand by?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same plan for post spot. You really want to lean on those braids and pick your poisons, answering relic, preventing that mana engine from getting going, and then just hopefully interact with the mana engine and then just go over the top of the Slogok deck in the long game, uh, while interacting enough to keep them off of comboing.
All right, and let's check out Noah's deck real quick here as well. Anything that changes up here for game number 3?
I think it's pretty much the same for game 3 here as well. Maybe slightly higher chance of that Jace coming in. It's already pretty good against analysts, but particularly post spot when you're not applying that much pressure. It's a really good pivot threat to have access to as a one-off in your list. I mean, other than that, just all the stuff we already knew was good. So those unlicensed versus that Urta, you're really leaning on those powerful sideboard cards.
All right, well, let's go to game number 3 as those players do seem to be ready. And we see Alan dealing out his 7-card hand. Has a pick of poison, fires victory, some land spelunking, and a braid. Looks to be a little land light than you might normally want but good enough with 3 of them.
Yeah, I think any hand that has like multiple pieces of interaction for either creature or relic is just really hard to mull. Just a braid plus pick your poison is such a strong start that as long as the rest of your hand is functional, I think you're kind of priced into keeping an Allen spot.
We are going to see a Xander's Land and a passing from Noah. Forest for Alan. Back to Noah.
Yeah, and I really like leaving up a braid here so you can interact with whatever 2-drop Noah has because you really don't want Noah starting to get his value engines going.
Yep. Alan using Fire's Victory there, decided to save the braid, maybe for something like a second relic from Noah. We do have that first one covered with Pick Your Poison, but, thinks the mana is going to be tied up for him for the next couple of turns. And Spelunking going to put another land into play. And Alan kind of having a great start here.
Yeah, he still needs some sort of way to actually bridge to his late game. Notably, not very many fetch lands have been cast this game, and we haven't seen an analyst or anything of the sort. So that part's a little awkward. But that said, Noah just hasn't been able to get his game going, and so that puts him pretty far behind, given how much Alan has developed his mana.
Slowgurk the Overslime hits the battlefield in the passing of the turn.
Yeah, this is really not where you want to be as a Slogok deck. You really want to be in a spot where you're like applying pressure and then holding up interaction. Like that Slogok got that Inti, but backed up by Urtai, backed up by bounce lands, things like that, rather than just playing a naked Slogok out onto an empty board and hoping for a lack of removal. Uh, yeah, as long as there's not any legends in play, Noah's deck kind of functions at an inherently lower level. The channel lands are a lot weaker, relics a lot weaker, and so until he can assemble some sort of board presence, his deck's going to look very clunky, and there's going to be large parts of it that don't work.
Yep. We are going to see Noah play a Relic of Legends this turn, play an Odawara, cast an Inti, and then pass the turn back to Alan.
Yeah, we are seeing Alan run a little bit into the classic ramp problem of he had early interaction, he's developed his mana, but he really needs to find something that actually moves him towards winning the game. He needs to find some top end rather than just more air and lands. And that's definitely one of the ways Noah gets ahead here is if Alan just spends a few turns not doing anything.
Yep. We're going to see Alan pick up that second red mana here as well. So now we can get some of the double red stuff going, or 2 red spells in a turn. As we are going to see Alan tap 2 mana and play Aftermath Analyst.
Analyst is absolutely huge here. That means that digs 3 more cards towards Memory Deluge, gets a bunch of lands out of Alan's deck, which is nice. And we know there's a pick your poison for the Relic of Legends, so there's not going to be any combo shenanigans happening on Noah's side of the board.
Yep. You're seeing Alan just pick up his deck. That's because there are 3 of those Streets of New Capenna lands in the graveyard, and Alan's just shortcutting it. No reason to waste our time moving it back and forth. Gonna be able to get 3 basics from the deck. And now is, has all the mana, and like you were saying, just needs to draw something kind of big. This is sometimes the problem with ramp decks, is you aren't able to find the big thing that actually closes the game. We saw the Naya ramp deck in round number 6 have sort of the inverse problem where it had all the big things but no payoffs. So we're going to see Alan Wu cast a Pick Your Poison on artifacts, get to the Relic of Legends, kind of turn off that combo capabilities, as Noah's going to untap and draw a Darkslick Shores.
Yeah, untapping with Inti is pretty important to Noah. It's the first thing that's kind of gone his way this game. Well, once you get one of those like Godflow and pressure engines going, that's the zone Noah starts operating where he gets more and more likely to win this game. So Inti going is applying pressure every turn, is digging him more towards the cards that really matter, and that leaves him maybe set up to take control of this game if Alan doesn't do much for the next few turns.
And Alan's like, hey, I got a Broker's Hideout, and that's it. I'm top decking. And now Noah knows the coast is clear, but doesn't have anything that he wants to develop onto the board.
And yeah, this is where we come to this is where we get to the analyst deck really taking advantage of those modal spells with adventures and channels and such, where the deck is really not that where the deck, despite having like a bunch of early plays, just it's just not that likely to fizzle because there's so many live draws in the deck. Shigeki, Sky Turtle, something like Doppelgang or Memory Deluge are all just like draws that take over the game on their own pretty quickly. And so it puts Noah in a pretty awkward spot where he has to apply pressure really quickly.
Yep, as we do see a Memory Deluge come down after Noah plays the 3rd Inti. I can tell Noah's into it, as we are going to see. Hey, they're going to see 2 cards get grabbed there immediately. And I believe we have Flashback Memory Deluge available to us as well. And we might see Alan just go for it. We've seen Alan give a lot of respect towards cards like Urtai in this match, especially when low on resources. Ill-Time Explosion is in hand. That's nothing we could use to clear up the board. And those kind of spots are, how do you sort of decide what you're going to do, as Alan is going to be resolving the Deluge?
So I think it's a lot about pathing out what your next few turns look like. So if Alan has something like a Virtue in hand, that makes sense to play that because you're going to have access to a lot of mana off the Delusion. You're going to have like some card draw from other spells. So Virtue sets you up well enough on subsequent turns that's worth playing out, even though it leaves your card draw spell open to being countered. But barring something like that, you really just want to make sure you're set up to have a good next few turns, and resolving a second Memory Deluge, like getting to look at another 7 cards, then Noah only has at most 1 or maybe 2 pieces of interaction up on any given turn, but Alan has a lot of mana and the ability to play out multiple threats in a single turn. So with that Flashback Deluge, you can set up your next few turns to be able to win through any interaction Noah could have in this spot.
Yep. Looks like Alan figuring out exactly what he wants. Doing what you said, mapping out the next couple of turns, seeing how much mana do I have. If I had a Virtue of Strength, would it be enough to win? Answer is probably. If not that turn, the next.
Yeah, and this is something Memory Deluge is so strong at. We print these 4 mana instant speed draw spells quite frequently, and they see play, they serve different roles. But Memory Deluge is kind of unique in terms of the sheer card quantity and inevitability it gives you. Where Memory Deluge is key to the way this analyst deck functions, where what it really leans on is once you draw your first deluge, you're never running out of cards. It's looking at 11 cards for you. You're likely to find another deluge that's looking at more cards. You have more card advantage in your deck. So the sheer quantity of cards Memory Deluge provides really important here to Alan Wu and pretty crucial to the Steamer analyst strategy as a whole.
Yep. And we might be seeing their players is basically Noah got a little, confused there for a second. Was like, wait, why is this land in play? Shouldn't have fetched. And the answer is that was the one that we revealed off duress a long time ago. And we never really played because we might have drawn a card like Ill-Timed Explosion and maybe wanted to discard it. Now we're playing it, popping and going to pick your poison down that amulet so Noah cannot have that lot of mana that he probably needs to get out of this. And now he's just stuck with 2 Go for the Throats in hand and an NT.
Yeah, and this is another thing the analyst deck does really well, which is apply a squeeze on whether or not you play removal. You can't really afford to not play removal against analysts just because Nissa takes over the game very quickly if unanswered. It just generates too much mana. But at the same time, the core of the deck's game plan is not reliant on Nissa. You can still play a ramp game plan and never really expose anything to interaction. And so that makes cards like Go for the Thread sometimes awkward and dead in hand. And being able to waste those removal spells that way is a big strength of Analyst.
Yeah. Alan playing his Virtue on the old Garenbrig growth, getting back to Analyst, playing the Analyst, milling 3. Can now pop it and is mana neutral. Gonna get 6 lands out of the graveyard.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many lands Alan has left to fetch in his deck.
It looks like Alan's counting 2 just to be sure. This is something that happens with this deck, right? You can only play so many basics and have these lands that enable it. So sometimes you do run out of these lands. Although I think Alan Wu is going to pull the Street Fighter here and probably set up a Fireball to win the game.
Yeah, it's a little awkward into something like Urtai out of Noah, where there's not actually another piece of card advantage we've seen. We haven't seen a Shigeki or a Deluge or something that's going to just take over the game. If that one win con is interacted with, it could still be somewhat problematic. But that said, I mean, we're really like nitpicking small things that are wrong when Alan Wu has 10 trillion mana and everything else going right in the world. So I really like his spot, and it makes sense to set up to win next turn.
Yeah, looks like we're only able to get 4 lands out of our deck. So it looks like Alan's going to start by maybe playing a Memory Deluge. And if this gets Urtide, we have Ill-Timed Explosion in hand, which could have cleaned the board up. So Alan's going to get to see 4 more cards and have the 5 mana available. I think notably also didn't play a land for turn. So that could be something.
Just in case he didn't have enough mana.
It's important, Stonks. As we do see a passing of the turn.
Yeah, I think with the Memory Deluge and us knowing about the 2 Go for Threats in Noah's hand, Alan has this pretty much locked up. Even if he doesn't win the game next turn, he's just got such a commanding lead on the board and on mana, and he's not going to run out of cards for the rest of the game. So it's more a matter of when he actually ends up killing Noah rather than if.
Yeah, and the SNC lands gaining that little bit of life every turn, matters a ton when spots like this where the pressure isn't that big. So Alan bought himself about 2 more turns just from bringing back all those lands last turn. We do see Unlicensed Hearse get revealed to the NT. Going to see if Noah wants to tap out for that. Noah knows that if he does, Alan will know the coast is clear for Urtai. But if he doesn't, maybe the Shigeki is going to take over. And it seems like Noah might be trying to bluff, like, I have a card that actually matters, and see if he can get Alan to play more turns. But decides, I can't really bluff and win the game. So taps out for the Unlicensed Hearse.
Yeah, at this point, Alan has so many threats and pieces of card advantage that there's no real reason for him to just not jam every turn. He can have a spell or trigger counted off Urta and still be extremely far ahead. So there's no reason for him to just not play into it. And if the Urta count is something, cool, just play something else that also wins the game anyway.
Yep. Yeah, also a spot where bluffing doesn't really get you in it, right? Look what's Alan going to do, not just cast the cards like you were saying. So you got to know when you can, actually sell a bluff that people can buy. And you're seeing Noah kind of tap or count here to see how much the mana actually is. Oh, it looks like what's happening, sorry, is there's that plus the hearse eating things while it was tapped out. So that hearse will be at 2.
Yep,
But
and I believe that's 3 of Alan's 4 memory delusions in deck now exiled, which would matter a lot if Alan hadn't just spent the last 2 turns stalking his hand so that he could win the game this turn.
yep, as I do think we're going to see a Virtuous Strength into a Fireball for 20-something damage. We're going to see exactly how Alan wants to do it, but he has now, tripled his mana, which was already an impressive amount of mana before. Seems a little excessive, maybe a little greedy. Maybe Alan should give some to his opponent.
Well, what I'm interested to see is whether he stops at tripling his mana. I wonder whether we might see him 9-tuple his mana this turn.
9-tuple isn't a word and it can't hurt me, as we are going to see it come down onto the battlefield.
Well, 9-tuple might not be able to hurt you, but a World Soul's Rage for what this is, that's 6 lands, so 52. A World Soul's Rage for up to 52 can hurt you, unfortunately.
We'll see about that, as it does look like the play. Noah's like, no. For the stream, we must have the correct amount of mana. It's important. It looks like we're leaving 20 in the pool.
No, just 2 in the pool. Much more modest.
Oh no, it looks like
okay, 12. That makes sense.
Okay, we're gonna buy everything back first before we go for the win. You see Noah smiling there. He's like, 7 and 1 ain't bad. I got another round to play. So it does look like. Oh, is Alan going to go for the 27-tuple mana?
Oh, that would be really nice.
Yeah, it would be a ton.
You can do it, Alan. We believe in you. You're in the booth.
That's right, Alan. Go for it. Make them track the mana. Make Garrison do it. That's my neighbor. He's working hard. I live next to him. Sometimes his noise complaints. Yeah, make him count that mana on stream. Let's go. Vengeance for all those parties he throws. As we are going to see more. 27 red added to the pool. We're going to need to get the judges to look at that. The game state isn't clear to me. As we do see a World Soul's Rage does get cast for, I can only assume, 1 million.
So I have an important question, Mason.
Yep.
We know you don't believe in 9-tuple. How do you feel about 27-tuple?
Well, that's just obviously real. I just saw it happen, as I just saw Alan Wu also win that round and move on to 8-0. Congratulations to Alan there. That was an incredibly well-played game from both players with a little bit of nonsense at the end. What more could you ask for when it comes to Round of Magic? Well, Arya, what if we just said more Magic? So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with some of our backup feature match.